As usual, we'll give folks just a little bit of time to get on the Zoom call, and then we'll get started. All right, I will now call this meeting of the South Woodbury School Board to order. We will start with the land acknowledgement, and we have a special treat today. Alma Richards and Valerie Craven, two students at South Woodbury Elementary, will be reading the land acknowledgement. Would you ladies like one of these mics or the big one? There you go. Thank you.
I would like to acknowledge the land we stand on that belong to the indigenous people since time immemorial, who are the caretakers and stewards of this land.
Thank you so very much. That was wonderfully done, and I love those rainbow boots. Moving along the agenda, we will be having public comment tonight. If you are present and would like to make public comment, please go back and see Ms. McCarr in the back and sign up. If you are on the Zoom session with us, thank you for joining us online. And please note your name and location, just a general location in the Q&A function. Just that alone to start with, so we know that you want to say something, and then you can start typing your comment, which I will read when the time is appropriate. We'll now move on to agenda and minutes. Before we do, I just want to note that Andrea Downs is out with a sick kid. I had the opportunity to talk to her before coming to the meeting, so I have her input on some of the policy issues and some of the major decisions in front of us that I'll be sharing with the board at the appropriate time. There is no such thing as a proxy, so I will not be voting for her, but I'll be sharing her opinion. Okay. Are there any objections to approving the agenda and minutes as presented? Hearing none, the agenda and minutes are approved as presented. We did move one thing out of the consent agenda at Joe's request, which will be a new business later on. With that being said, are there any objections to approving the consent agenda as presented? Consent agenda is approved as presented. We'll move on to presentations and Mrs. Richards in the elementary school.
Susie, before you get started, I do want to acknowledge that Mrs. Richards is bringing many students with her tonight. And each one of you, when you're finished presenting, I want you to make sure you come up and see me, because I have what I'm excited to share with you. I've been made fun of for wanting to share this with you, but first of all, there's a sticker in here that says "Making a Difference." I presented to our South Woodbury School Board and community. And it's this very cool pencil case that has South Woodbury logo all over it. There's a ruler, pencil, pencil sharpener, and eraser. So I want you to make sure each one of you comes up here and takes one with you before you leave. Now, Mrs. Richards, now that they're all excited.
All right, we are ready to roll. I just want to start by saying big thanks to the families, to the parents who brought their children here tonight. It's never easy on a Wednesday night. It's a school night to come out, and I really appreciate every single child said yes, and every single parent got them here. So I'm very grateful. So we're going to just give a overview of what's happening at Southwoodby Elementary School K4. And we're going to start with Aria. We can go to the first slide. You can introduce
My name is Aria, and I'm in 4th grade in Mr. Berquist's class. We held a food drive for people who can't always buy the food they need. Good Cheer helps with that. I liked being involved because I get what I need and not everyone does. So it feels really good to get to give back to the community.
And thank you so much. And there's also, there is a slideshow. So each student has a slide. They're not reading from that slide because they're so good at presenting, but I did want you to know that they're there. So next up is Ella Cooper.
My name is Ella Cooper, and I'm in the Orca Reading Book Club. I wanted to get Orca Reading Book Club started because a lot of people I know that like to read but are not the best at reading, just like me. So if people had more help with reading, maybe the book club could help. And each 4th grader gets to bring a friend, and so they could help with everything. And Miss Potter and Miss Brown help.
Next up is Leah Bixby.
My name is Leah Bixby, and I am in the 4th grade Mrs. DeMott's class. I am on the principal's advisory team, where we are a group of students who help make things happen in our school. My idea was to create a school-wide art project. There's also a drama club, sports club, and art club started by our group. The art project has all our name. Everyone in the building at the time had their name signed on it. And if you want to go see it, you can just go out that door, and you cannot miss it. It's right there.
Awesome job. Next up is Kinley Fritz, who's going to be talking about our random acts of kindness.
My name is Kinley Britz, and I am in Mrs. Hophius's class in 4th grade. I'm on the principal's advisory team. I help with RAC, Random Acts of Kindness Week. We had a lot of great projects. We had a Read Your Heart Out on Friday, where everyone sat in the halls and read. We had a Wave Pet Food Drive for the pets. We had a kindness tree out by the office, although there are doors, so you can't really see it. And a lot of great projects.
Next up is Declan McCoy.
My name is Declan McCoy, and I am in 4th grade and in Mrs. DeMott's class. What I'm going to be talking about is our Washington Mammals Project. So basically what we would do is this started from January to February of this year. And what we would do is we would research a certain mammal from Washington State and like their habitat, food, what they eat, that kind of stuff. And one day we went out into the woods just behind the school, and we, because there's a little trail, we would go and get some like materials like moss, leaves, sticks, leaves, that kind of stuff. And then we would come back and we had these shoe boxes. And then we would hot glue it all together, and it would be like a little part of a world of where this animal would live, just in this little shoebox.
Next up is Alma and Valerie. Alma's going to start by talking about the visit to City Hall, and then Valerie's going to talk about their business visits.
My name is Alma Richards, and I am in 2nd grade in Miss Coda's class. On our field trip, We met the mayor of Langley and learned what a mayor does. My friends liked seeing his office and getting notebooks. The question I asked him was, "What have you done to make a difference since you became mayor?" He said that was a good question and that he bet I could be president someday. Answering my question, he said he hired a new police chief.
My name is Valerie Craven. I am also in second grade, and I would like to talk about delivering the hearts we made. They were made of felt, we made them in art class. We made 100 felt hearts. We brought them to businesses, and they loved them. We also made quotes. One of the quotes we wrote is, "You can be a rainbow in someone's cloud."
Thank you both so much. And last but not least, we have Grayson Zielinski, a library ninja.
My name is Grayson Zelensky, and I'm in Miss DeMott's class in 4th grade, and I'm going to talk a little bit about library ninjas. Well, library ninjas is a thing where some people in some classes get to go at specific times and get some name tags from the library and get a book cart and go to specific classes to pick up their books. And then when you get all the books, you can bring the cart back to the library. And if Miss Brown or Miss Marty is there, we can stack up the books into 2 piles, and then one person will get to scan them and check them back into the library, and the other person will look at the computer just to make sure that they get checked into the library. And after the first pile is done, they switch. I think that's all. We're called library ninjas because we're always really quiet in the halls when we're around classes, so we don't distract the classes.
That is our presentations. Good job, everybody. Why don't you go up and get your gifts now? Any questions from the board for our students?
I just want to thank you all for coming. That was really informative, and I really appreciate your public speaking skills and your generosity with your time this evening.
I have a question for anyone who's in any of the clubs. When you got the idea to start a club, how did you go from having the idea to making it really happen with Miss Richards or whoever else helped?
So basically, we talked to Miss Richards, and she helped make it happen, and everybody kind of tuned in to make it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you all for not just coming out and telling us all about this, but for demonstrating leadership in your school and providing things for other people in the school and in the community outside the school. I really love it when our schools and our community can mix and mingle like that. So I thank you very much for being at the forefront, being in the lead on all of these things.
Yeah, thank you so much. The presentations were amazing. It's so great to see students taking lead in their school and taking initiatives. I also want to compliment all of you on how articulate you are.
And someday you can sit up here
Yeah.
and be a student board representative. And then 10 or 15 or 20 years later, you can sit up here and be an elected board representative.
And then after that, you can be president.
Yeah. Thank you. You're also welcome to stay and hear about the bond.
Yeah. We do have an abbreviated version of the bond presentation, but we'll give it just a moment so that folks can filter out.
Thank you. Good night. Want us to start? I'm going to turn it over to Dan. We're going to do an abbreviated bond presentation because you've seen it several times. And at the end, we also have some information on our survey results.
Okay, I will try to be abbreviated. So we're looking at a bond proposal that if the resolution is passed tonight, we bring to the county and will be on the ballot in April. And I'll go through some of these. So it's been about a year and a half. We've been working on this and a lot of process behind it, which I won't go into. A little bit about our buildings. This building was built in the mid 1980s. The high school was built in the early 80s and remodeled in the mid 90s. That's the last major work that's been done in our facilities. So they're about 40 years old, or will be by the time we do some new work on it. We looked at this process. We looked at 6 guiding principles: a 21st century learning environment, making buildings welcoming with identities, inclusive environments, looked at the operations and maintenance part of the facilities, wayfinding, safety, and then classrooms for today's learning. The photos are pictures of our existing facilities and then conceptual drawings of what they could look like if we did some work. So this one would be the high school, the courtyard at the middle school, high school, the facility at the stadium, modifications to make classrooms new, inviting, creating identity, entrances for both the middle school and the high school at their current facility, safety, repairs to parking lots, flow, that type of process. Wayfinding and safety, again, maybe a covered walkway at this facility to connect it to the gymnasium down below. Inclusive environments, updating the playground equipment we have that makes it truly available for all students to participate and have an enjoyable time with. Updating restrooms, bathrooms, locker rooms, anything that needs ADA compliance, or just a refreshing because a lot of them are quite used. Inclusive environment, we're looking at a covered facility at the middle school, high school campus, and on a second one here for outside use. We are looking also at the operational piece of our facilities. There are some laws that were passed. House Bill 1257 is one of those that is requiring us to make some improvements to become more of a clean, green type building. And as we're making the improvements to the HVAC, heating, cooling, et cetera, that would allow us to make some of these adjustments. Operations and maintenance, looking at improving the mechanical systems. Roofing upgrades, picture of the middle school, high school, about 150,000 square feet, needs to be re-roofed. We looked at priorities at both this campus and at the middle school, high school campus. Similar in a lot about retrospects: exterior building improvements, inclusive playgrounds, ADA compliance, restrooms, heating, cooling system upgrades, reconfiguration, repavement of our parking lots, covered outdoor educational structures, covered walkway here, upgraded controls to improve that heating, cooling capacity, and interior flooring upgrades. At the secondary, a lot of the same things, but also some siding, window replacement, the structures that would identify the middle school and the high school entrances, locker room upgrades, some classroom reconfigurations, some work at the stadium, in the field and the track, and the courtyard in the back part of the school, upgrading that also. Project is basically two parts. First is the construction and the other is a soft cost. It's all the things that you don't see in a construction project. You know, the fees, inflation, taxes, permits, management, any mitigation you have to do when you open a wall up, and you find something inside it that you didn't expect. We're proposing a $80 million bond. If we were to build it today, the cost would be about $45 million in hard costs, the construction costs, and then about 50% of that would be the soft costs. We're planning for inflation escalation because we're not going to start building tomorrow. If it gets passed, it'll be at least a year or two down the road before we get deep into these projects. So that gives us that $80 million. Historically, we haven't had a bond since the mid 1990s, which we paid off in 2010. So for the last 13 years, there has not been a bond debt for this district. When we looked at the cost of how much is this going to cost, we have to look at the assessed value because that's how we started looking at this. And you can see the assessed value in the South Woodby School District. This is not school district property, but it's all the real estate within the district boundaries. It's currently a little over $7 billion. So based on that, the cost to a taxpayer is dependent upon the value of their property. If their property is worth $100,000, the tax would be $70 or about $5.83 a month. If it's $500,000, you can see it's about $29 a month. So it's a sliding scale based on that 70 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. A look at other school districts in the island, Snohomish County, so our neighboring school districts, how much they're paying for bonds, the EP&O levy and the capital projects. You can see that we're currently at about 99 cents for a EP&O and capital without a bond, but substantially below quite a few other districts. So if we estimated that in 2024, we were starting to pay this back, based on the assessed value that we have in this district, the bond would cost 70 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. Our EP&O or operating levy, about 48 cents, our capital projects 31. So that would be a total rate to the taxpayer of $1.49 per $1,000 of assessed value. You can't read this, but this is basically the payback period. So if it's over approximately a 20-year, it gives you kind of that how much is principal, how much is interest. It's very similar to a home mortgage when you see that type of statement. Also, Joe, you want to do this one?
So we also put out a survey to our entire community, including students and community members. We had about 380 responses, but not everybody answered every question. This is a picture of the respondents, whether they were staff members, students, parent, guardian, or a combination. So most of the respondents are parent guardian with students enrolled in the school. Next, Dan. Oops, back one. So one of the things that we asked folks is, what do you think of our school district? And if you look at this, 83% or so think that our district is from fair to excellent. We do have some folks, 15% of the respondents say that it's poor or had no opinion. So that again is a picture of what the respondents have to say about the quality of our schools. Of course, we would love it to be 100% at excellent. We know we have work to do. Again, we asked people what they think the greatest need is facing the district. We had 366 folks respond to this. And the number one issue is modernizing aging facilities and refreshing the school appearance, as well as updating building infrastructure. The rest are important, but these three rose to the top. And then one final question that I'm sharing with you tonight was about, would they support a bond? And so we see that of the respondents here, almost 68% say yes, they would support a bond. We know that we need 60% yes vote to have a bond pass. We had 23.4% say maybe and they needed more information, and 8.8% say no. So if you go to the next slide, we took the maybe anybody who put in a question, we gleaned those questions and answered them. So Dan, if you click on FAQ for me, on our website, folks can actually see the questions and the answers from the folks who responded to the survey. And it doesn't work. It worked before. I think it's you, Dan. It could be you.
I
Could
think
be
you just
me.
need to share a different window.
It's really fine. You're not going to read all these questions here tonight, but know that it's on our website. Under school district, there is a bond heading. And if folks go to the bond heading, they can find the FAQs and see the answers to their questions. And there it is. It wasn't me.
And as I recall, one of the major questions that came up time and again was about tennis courts. And the answer is we don't need to wait for a bond to do that. Work is underway.
Work is underway on our tennis courts. We actually have had that planned. It's going to be this summer for resurfacing and repairs. And some of the questions like what's the difference between a bond and a levy? We've answered that. And the specifics around what would be funded. We gave the big picture items. We really don't dive into the actual projects unless the community approves this bond. So the board has seen this many, many times in its entirety as the community. And tonight, it's really about the board making the decision whether or not to put this bond on the ballot. If you say yes, then we need to get it to the county by Friday so that it makes the April 25th ballot. Ballots would be mailed 2 weeks ahead of that date, as they normally are. I believe this is one of, or if not the only item on that particular ballot. One of the other things you'll see tonight, if you approve this to be on the ballot, then we will also need to look for a pro and con statement for the voter's guide. We have individuals who have stepped forward to do the pro. Certainly, if there are folks who want to do the con and they're here tonight, the board can consider approving them. If you don't approve a con committee tonight, the county auditor will find someone to do the con statement. And that's due next Friday. This Friday, we'd have to put the resolution in, and then by next Friday, those statements have to be put in. Any questions for Dan and I?
Thanks for all the information, not just tonight, but ongoing as we've been learning. And my question is about the risks. If there's any risks of, well, yeah, with each step, by the way, with the board approving the bond and putting it in front of the voters, and then for the voters to approve it, and then for the bond to become a reality, are there risks inherent in moving forward with it? And then compare those to the risks of not putting a bond in front of the voters at all.
Well, and Dan can certainly jump in. The risk of putting it forward, I believe, is that the cost escalates and the $80 million doesn't get us everything we want to get. The reverse of that is that costs go down and we actually can accomplish what we hope to accomplish with that money. If the bond does not pass, if the board puts it on the ballot and it does not pass, we can certainly try again. In the event that it doesn't pass, we continue to do the work we've been doing with the capital levy. We get $2 million every year, but again, as you have heard explained, we can't do the roof on the high school with that money. It's not enough. We won't be able to replace the siding. We won't be able to upgrade the stadium and so on. So we've been doing the maintenance for all these years, but we need to upgrade our facilities. They're coming to the end of their time, and without this maintenance, it would be a risk that we would again have issues to contend with. So I'm not sure that I will share with you what the student said to me, and my student superintendent advisory team meeting today. They asked about the bond. And I told them what the board was going to be grappling with tonight and about the pro and the con. And they said, what are the cons? What is the downside? The downside is always that as a community, we need to pay the bond back, but we need to maintain our facilities. So that's the reality of the answer, I think, Joe.
And I think there is one other con, which is if we put it out to the community and it does not get approved, we are out money for the election itself.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. All of the costs that are associated with what we're doing, should the bond pass, the district is paying out of capital that 2 million that the levy, we will be able to reimburse that from the bond. So yes, that's also a risk, is although the time, effort, and money that has gone into preparing for this. And there are fees that we're incurring. There are legal fees that we'll incur. There's the county cost for doing the election. There's the architects and engineers. So yeah, there's a cost. Did I miss anything, Dan? Okay.
Christy, before we get to public comment, can you pull me into the Zoom webinar as a presenter? Any other comments or questions from the board? We've heard this a lot. We've had a lot of chance to ask questions and make comments, and I really appreciate the administration having all of this information prepared for us and ready for us and repeating it for us and for the community so that we can get the best possible response and reaction to this.
I'll ask another one if no one else has questions. Thank you for collecting all the questions into an FAQ. But for our purposes, can you describe some of the themes of the most common questions, especially of the people who are in the maybe category? What types of things are going to help them make a decision?
So the constructive questions that folks asked were around what are the specifics around what you're doing that is driving the cost to be what it is. We were all surprised at the cost of doing business for fixing our buildings because it's been a very prices have escalated. We all knew that. Anybody who's done something simply as going to Home Depot for a piece of plywood has realized the costs are outrageous. So those were some of the questions that were asked. How are you going to manage the money? What if you don't need all 80 million? Do you have to borrow all 80 million? Those were really the themes. It was for more information. Again, there's very few, less than 20 folks on the no, I won't vote for it. And the maybes, again, their questions were reasonable. We answered them, and I haven't heard from folks saying, I want more information. We do have folks who want to help get the word out. So that's good news.
And actually, during one of my visits to one of the schools, I had the opportunity to talk to a class, and they had a ton of questions about the bond, and there were great questions about what could the money go towards, what would it be used for, what a bond is versus a levy, what's a levy. Some really great and very interested questions. We had a bunch of very interested students. That was fun and fascinating.
Some of the student questions have been about what's happening next year. They want to know about, I'm going to be in 6th grade. What's it going to be like? And so we're already putting those changes into place for next year. And Kayla and Jeff will be doing a lot of work together with the students. I know mostly Kayla, with the students to help them transition and, see where the new entrance is going to be and see where their classrooms are going to be and find out how we're going to, put the signs up on the building so they can find their way and so on. Of course, that will be enhanced with the bond, but we're certainly going to do those things in the short term. So the students come from a very concrete place What are the buses going to be like? What's it, how are you going to fix the parking lots for transportation in and out of school? So,
What will class be like during construction? That was a question
Right.
I got. And I was able to tell them that I was at the high school the last time we had a bond doing work on the high school. And it wasn't bad. It was
And-
great being able to see it build right there.
we're hoping that the major changes like the siding and the roof can majority of work over summer, but again, it will impact in the short term.
I must say, I was also at the high school during that remodel, and one additional pro for my family is that even if my daughters are too old to see the culmination of this project, hopefully they would be able to potentially raise children in this district and not have to say, these buildings were last remodeled when your grandmother was a student.
That's right.
Okay, I think that's everything. Thank you very much to Mr. Pullman and Dr. Moshe. We'll move on to public comment now. Do we have folks from here in the room? Mr. Rose?
Excuse me, Rufus, the mic's not on. I'm so sorry. Here, come take mine.
Here, I can hand you one.
Does that work?
Oh, there you go. You got it. Thank you.
Live on Max Walton Road. My questions are pretty much of a tell me what you're going to do in more specifics. The kinds of things, there's no question that maintenance has to be done. It has to be done on a continuing basis. I don't argue with that. But I have the sense that $80 million, which is a down jump from 100 million earlier that you had talked about, seems kind of like a ballpark thing. It's not specific. I understand the $20 million more or less soft thing. I recognize the need for that kind of thing. The kind of thing that I think would be helpful to the voting public that you may be able to do, but I haven't seen yet, is bids or estimates for the specific things you intend to do and prioritize them in terms of product for education. The attractiveness of a school is a community thing. It's a pride thing, and that's important. I guess one of the things I'm not clear about is your capital fund capability, which is a couple of $1 million a year. Couldn't some of these things that you've put into the 80 million figure have been done on a regular basis, or could be done in lieu of doing this on a bond? The kinds of things that I think of are the graphics that you have up here, rainproof walkway, that kind of thing, for example. I think it would be very helpful to the community to understand as best you can get to the numbers and the priorities for those various elements. I'm troubled a little bit by coming down from 100 million to 80 million, both very round numbers, non-specific. And I think you owe it to the public to be more specific. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I do want to note that this is a comment period rather than a question period. Some of the answers that you're looking for are in that presentation, the details of that presentation, just to note. And as Dr. Moshe mentioned, some of that will not be, the bids, for instance, will not be done until after it's approved, if it is approved by the community. Any other comments or questions here in the room? Okay. Do we have, oh, We have someone else who wants to sign up. You can sign up there and then come on up. I can't actually see it in the Q&A. Would you?
Okay,
mind
I'm going to
reading
read the, I believe we answered it. Gwendy Hastings from Freeland. What is your plan B if the bond does not pass? What will you do to update or bring the buildings, to bring them to a level of proper maintenance if the bond does not pass? What will be the timeline for putting it to a vote again? More importantly, what will you do to separate the entrances for the middle school and high school? Will you have to delay the transfer of middle school if the bond does not pass? So she's asked some questions here. I think the presentation answered them, but since it's public comment and not a Q&A, that's what was written there.
And Gwendy, if you do have questions, you can contact us directly via email or other manners to answer those questions.
Yeah, the website also has many, many answers on it.
Thank you for the opportunity. Bill Carruthers, Clinton. 2 questions. One more important to me, and that is, what is going to be the bid process? Is that too vague? Okay. And second, this is really minor, but I'm curious how you're going to reconfigure the classrooms. Is that where you might not have any walls or anything like that? Or is it going to be traditional, just a remodeling perhaps?
I actually would like to answer this if the board's okay with that. The bid process is laid out and very specific. We have to do specs for particular projects, and I'm looking at Dan in case I misspeak, but we have to do specs for a particular project, including all of the things laid out by an architect. That goes out to bid. It ends at a particular time and date. Those bids are open publicly, and the district takes the lowest bid that meets the specifications. And so let me just finish the thought. So if that happens and somebody else comes along and says, I can do it for $100,000 less, that's not acceptable. We cannot do that. It is a legal process that is outlined that we have to follow. So.
It's outlined in Washington state law. So it's
Yeah.
not policy. It's not.
And we can
guidelines, it's-
separate out those items. For example, we can say we would like to re-roof South Woodby High School. It's 150 square feet. It has particular needs and specifications and so on. And we put that singular project out to bid. And then roofers can come in and bid on that project, meet the specifications, be awarded the bid, and then they have to meet progress. And we can explain that in more detail to you. We can't really do a Q&A, but I wanted you to know that the bid process is outlined and Dan can give you specifics on how it works. The other is reconfiguring classrooms. We're talking about standard 4 walls, but we need to update them. They have not been updated in many, many years. So that's the classroom plan.
I want to caution the board not
Yeah.
to go into a Q&A format out of respect for our other public speakers and our protocols.
Yeah, we can answer the specific questions. Yeah. Okay. We don't have, I don't see any other Q&A on the Zoom. We have no one else present who wants to speak. So we will move on from public comments to new business, which starts with memorandum 2223-16. Approval of resolution number 669, general obligation bonds. This is our, this is the board approval or disapproval of the bond. If we approve it, it will go to the voters on April 25th. If we disapprove it, we'll take another run at it and see if we can fix the concerns that we have. Is there any discussion?
I just want to say that I've just really appreciated hearing all the input from the community and both here at meetings and workshops and via the form and also just all the work that district employees have put in to give us the information we need to make this decision. And I yeah, I think either way, the process leading up to this decision here has been very transparent, and I just appreciate the community input.
Can we get advisory votes from the students, please?
Aye. Aye.
And Andrea has noted to me that she is in favor of approving this as well. She does not have a vote since she is not here. I do not have her proxy, but she wanted that expressed. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2223-16, approval of resolution number 669, general obligation bonds, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has been approved. The bond will go to the voters in April. Next item, Memorandum 2223-17, approval of the essential update to South Whidbey School District Policy 1400, meeting conduct, order of business, and quorum. The next several policies are ones that we discussed at our last workshop. Is there any comments or questions on this one?
This is one that has optional, the highlighted text there. And so before we vote, I just want to confirm that we do not meet those requirements to, we are not able to delete the posting requirement, correct?
Correct.
And I believe there's another one further down that we also do not meet the requirement, which is to say we are in the position where we're doing the more transparent choice.
Yes, the more strenuous option, yes.
Okay.
And would we be correct to assume that the language referencing these choices will be removed from the clean copy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this one? Okay, can I get advisory votes from our student representatives?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2223-17, approval of the essential update to South Whidbey School District Policy 1400, meeting conduct, order of business, and quorum, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum has passed. Next one, Memorandum 2223-18, approval of the essential update to South Whidbey School District Policy 1420, proposed agenda and consent agenda. Is there any comments or discussions on this?
Same comment / discussion. We do not meet that exemption. And just to save a second, it will be removed. The note will be removed from the clean copy.
Yes. Okay. Student representatives.
Aye. Aye.
All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2223-18, approval of the essential update to South Whidbey School District Policy 1420, proposed agenda and consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2223-18 has been approved. We'll move on to Memorandum 2223-19, approval of the essential update to South Whidbey School District Policy 2411, Certificate of Educational Competency. Is there any discussion to be had on this one? Okay. Student board representatives, advisory vote.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2223-19, approval of the essential update to South Whidbey School District Policy 2411, Certificate of Educational Competency, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2223-19 has been approved. Memorandum 2223-20, approval of the essential update to South Whidbey School District Policy 3122, excused and unexcused absences. Is there any discussion to be had on this one? Okay, student representatives, advisory votes, please.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2223-20, approval of the essential update to South Whidbey School District Policy 3122, excused and unexcused absences, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2223-20 has been approved. Memorandum 2223-21, approval of the essential update to South Whidbey School District Policy 3231, student records. I talked to Andrea about this one. She said she had no strong opinion on the changes we discussed, which were either removing losing or from the language, the update, or adding a parenthetical remark after restitution that was financial or otherwise. She thought the latter might be good, but wasn't essential or problematic.
If I may weigh in with an opinion,
Mhm.
I believe that adding a parenthetical financial or otherwise after the word restitution would bring this policy into greater integrity with our district's values.
I would agree with Marnie on that point as well.
Do I have a,
I move to amend this sentence that reads, a diploma may not be released until a student has made restitution for damages assessed as a result of losing or damaging school materials or equipment, to add after the word restitution, parentheses, financial or otherwise, close parentheses.
is there any discussion on this proposed amendment? Dr. Moshe, you mentioned it, you said it wasn't problematic then. I'm just checking to make sure that that has not changed.
Has not changed.
Okay. So we have a motion to amend. We do not need a second since we are a small board. I would like to call this question. So I will go to our student representatives. We are taking advisory votes on whether or not to approve an amended Memorandum 2223-21, which changes the language to include that parenthetical remark.
Sorry, point of order. We're voting on the amendment?
Yes.
Not,
Yes,
we're not-
sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, voting on the amendment.
Aye. Aye.
All those in favor of amending this memorandum to include the parenthetical remark mentioned, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The amendment has passed. We'll now look at the amended memorandum. Students, advisory vote on the amended memorandum.
Sorry, but can I,
Yes, please,
now that we've dropped back
Yes.
down to the policy
Yes.
itself, I want to revisit discussion.
please.
So or maybe a question, I still am unable to determine where this policy change came from or why it was recommended. I searched in the WASDA policy and legal news, and there was a confusing statement about the policy only being changes to the cross references at the bottom, which is untrue. There's change to the policy itself. And so I would just love to hear from anyone else on the board if they were able to determine the genesis of this change.
I certainly was not. Dr. Moshe or Ms. Macaro, do you have any insight into that?
We don't.
These are provided to us from WASDA in
They
this
are.
form?
I mean, again, this particular change seems unnecessary to me. It was recommended. We always provide for you what WASDA recommends, but you're not obligated to make this change. It doesn't, it's not an issue of compliance with the law.
Any other discussion or comments on this? Okay, we have an amended memorandum before us for vote. Student representatives, your advisory votes.
Aye. Aye.
To the board now, let me get this appropriately. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 2223-21, approval of the essential update to South Liberty School District Policy 3231 student records as amended to include the parenthetical remark financial or otherwise, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
The Memorandum 2223-21 has been approved. Memorandum 2223-22, approval of the essential update to South Liberty School District Policy 3421, child abuse, neglect, and exploitation prevention. This is another one that we had questions for Andrea about, and she was able to provide her feedback on that as well. She had very similar concerns to the ones that were brought up here. She very much did did not like the inclusion of number C, which is talking about corporal punishment. Did not think that it was appropriate to have in our policy, since it's speaking of things outside of the school purview, and also could be confusing to mandatory reporters. She also noted that she thought it was very important for us to keep the language about exploitation of minors in there, even though it has been recommended to remove that and replace it with the language that she and others found problematic. Discussion.
Do we know why that exploitation language was pulled out of there?
She did not have any insight into that. To be completely fair on that, she is also dealing with being the only parent at home for a sick child. So,
Well, as a mandated reporter, I truly appreciate clarity in these laws because, you know, obviously from a personal standpoint and a structural standpoint, I'm always going to give, you know, act with diligence. But having clear law behind me when I do that work feels really valuable and important. So I appreciate that we're looking with this with a fine tooth comb. Thank you.
Would I be correct to assume that we could revisit this policy at another time with the presence of our policy expert if it warranted further discussion, should it fail to pass by a vote of the board tonight?
we could do that. We can also push it off until, postpone it until a specific point.
I would suggest that you table it. This one has given us all some concern. So I would like to, with the board's okay, get legal counsel on this one.
Yeah, so we can postpone specifically until the next board
Table it.
workshop.
Yep.
So I actually looked this up because I was
Okay.
curious. Tabling is a very specific thing that's different from postponing. It actually just sets it aside temporarily, but to a very specific point and has limitations. If we postpone until our next board workshop, that's proper Robert's rulesing.
Thank you for the Roberts rules. Yes, if I would suggest that you do whatever you need to do to give me time to get legal counsel.
So that would be a motion to postpone until our next board workshop.
I move we postpone memorandum 2223-22 approval of the essential update to policy 3421 until the next board workshop.
Any discussion on this?
Dr. Moshe, does that give you enough time to do what the work you need to do?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, student representatives, your advisory vote on the motion to postpone.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, all those in favor of postponing this this discussion and voting on this memorandum until our next board workshop, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2223-22 has been postponed until our next board workshop. Memorandum 2223-23, approval of the essential update to Southwood Beach School District Policy 3432 emergencies. This is another one we asked Andrea for some input on, and she mentioned that it is all of the legal language has been added for awareness and accountability issues, just to make sure that everyone at the board level is explicitly aware of it. Everyone at the administration level is explicitly aware of it, although I'm sure that they are in our district. It might not be true in some others, and that everyone who pays attention at every other level in the community is aware of it as well. And her recommendation was to keep it in. Discussion?
One question I had is, I believe it's just a small minor detail, but the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, should that be capitalized along with the State Military Department?
Yes, I remember we mentioned that one. Where is that in here?
Under district and school plan shall, and it might be the fourth point.
Yes. It's
Oh,
the
yeah.
fifth bullet.
Fifth bullet point, yeah.
Thank you. I move to capitalize the appropriate terms, including Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction and the state military. Would you say that the state military department, I want to interrupt my motion. I'm sorry, only the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. needs
And
to be
Washington
capitalized.
Emergency Management.
Okay, I move to amend by capitalizing the Washington Emergency Management and the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction in the 5th bullet point under district and school plans shall.
Okay, any discussion or comment on the amendment?
I don't think that's actually an amendment. We'll just
Oh,
fix
can we
that as
just do that?
typos,
That's a
okay?
typo, Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for your
So we need
keen
to
eye, Audrey.
Withdraw the amendment?
I
Or-
try, Robert's rules, I really do try.
I think if we were being perfect and utter sticklers, that would be necessary, but I think that, yeah, I think that we can fix typos.
Okay, great.
Okay, so would you like to withdraw the amendment?
I withdraw the amendment so long
Okay,
as the
just-
typos get
yeah,
fixed.
Just to make sure, yeah. Okay, so we're now back to the original memorandum. Typos will be fixed. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Okay. Student advisory votes, please.
Aye. Aye.
All those in favor of approving memorandum 2223-23, approval of the essential update to South Louis School District Policy 3432 emergencies, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2223-23 has been approved. Our last policy item for the evening, memorandum 2223-24, approval of the essential update to South Louis School District Policy 4210, regulation of dangerous weapons on school premises. Is there any comments or discussion to be made on this one?
I am curious about the highlighted passage that is selected for optional inclusion.
Mhm.
Does our proposal include that optional inclusion, and will it exclude the note?
I think that we should make that clear in making the final motion. So I would like to suggest that someone make an amendment that says we will either approve it with or without that. We had some discussion of that last time. Nothing has come up that suggests that would be.
I would
problematic.
suggest you include it.
Yeah.
That would,
Yeah, that was what our discussion got to last time. I was just making sure nothing had come to your attention in the meantime.
no, I would suggest you include it. And yes, we will take out the note that
Yes.
is highlighted if you approve this.
I'll move to include that piece then with the noted highlight taken out, but with those policy pieces left in.
Any comments or discussions on that amendment?
I just want to say that this is a time where some of my values conflict. I believe in people's right to privacy and certain and Second Amendment rights, and I think that there are already many legal exclusions to the Second Amendment for the safety of our children here on school property, and these should be included among them. And I just want to highlight the fact that sometimes our values conflict and we have to figure out which ones are more important, and the safety of children is always the most important to me.
Thank you. Okay. Student advisory votes on the student board representative advisory votes on the amendment to include those 2 points.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of amending this memorandum to include those 2 policy points and remove the note, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, the amendment has passed. We are back to the original motion to approve this with those 2 points added in. Any further comments or discussion? Okay, student board representatives, your advisory vote.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, all those in favor of approving memorandum 2223-24, approval of the essential update to South Louis School District Policy 4210, regulation of dangerous weapons on school premises with the included additional optional policies, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2223-24 has been approved. We'll move on to Memorandum 2223-25, approval of the food service contract update. Discussion.
Yeah, I just had a clarification question. Oh, bless you. A couple clarification questions about this. So it appears to be a price increase. Is that the price at the cash register for students and teachers, or is that the price the district pays to Chartwells, or perhaps both?
I'm going to defer to Dan as he's been closest to this.
Yeah, I probably should give you a little bit of background on what this is all about. The Department of Agriculture has recently sent out federal grants, which they refer to as their supply chain assistance funds for the child nutrition program. And it's a response to not being able to get product or at an increased cost. The funds, which is about $56,000 for our district, can only be used for the purchase of food. And it's a very strict guidelines on how it can be used. We do not buy food in this district. Chartwells produces the food and we pay them a per price meal. The maximum that we could increase, so we can't pass everything through to them. All we can do is increase the amount we pay Chartwells, has nothing to do with students or the cash register, is by 8.6%, inclusive of any price increase we had already negotiated. So we had a price of $3.47, which our current contract, which is the last year in our contract of a 5-year contract, expires at the end of June. So what I'm proposing is we increase it by 5.5 cents per meal, the amount we pay Chartwells. Works out to be about $2,800. They will do all the paperwork and identify the food they purchase that qualifies under this program so that we can keep the $56,000. So basically, we're going to give them $2,800 and get about $53,000 profit off of it. There is no way we can do this as a district because we don't purchase any food. We'd have to return those funds. So it's a little bit of improvement for Chartwells. One, their price has gone up in the cost of their food, but it covers the paperwork and all the documentation that they have to do because there's a lot of documentation. They have to identify every product they have, the cost per product, how much they supply on a monthly basis, all those things. So they're going to go back and redo everything for us so that we can actually keep these funds. So that's really what it's about. It's a slight increase in their per meal price. Doesn't affect students or anybody buying the meals, but it does allow us to keep about $53,000 that we'd have to return otherwise.
Thank you. And so just to clarify, this increase would go effective backdated from the beginning of this calendar year through the end of our contract with Chartwells?
Technically, I think if you look at this, it may say January 1st through June 30th. So the price increase starts in January. They will go back to September and rebill us so we can keep those additional funds.
Gotcha. And does this impact our contract negotiations with them for the potential renewal of our contract?
No, it doesn't affect anything. The other question that was brought up is, we are in the last year of our contract with a food service management company. So we will need to determine March, April at the very latest, whether we want to go out for another request for proposal for a food service management company, or if we want to do something differently, not have a food service program or have an in-house program. The 3 options that we basically have.
Thank you. I look forward to that discussion.
Well, yes, thank you, Dan. And thank you to Chartwells as well for doing a bunch of work for a little bit of money so we can keep more money. Any other comments or questions on this? Okay, student board representatives, advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All those in favor of approving memorandum before I do that, Andrea mentioned that she was in favor of approving this as well. All those in favor of approving memorandum 2223-25, approval of the food service contract update, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2223-25 has been approved. Memorandum 2223-26, appointment of pro-con bond committees. Dr. Moshe, you have information on this.
Yeah, it's required by Island County that on bonds and levies, there is a pro and con statement in the voter's guide. And it's up to the governmental agency, AKA the school district in this case, to appoint a pro and a con committee. We've not had anybody step forward for providing the con statement. The board actually has to appoint, and this is your last meeting, to do that. If you don't, then the county auditor will solicit the con statement. We do have two folks who stepped up, namely Val Brown and Betsy Hofias, to write the pro statement. And so we would ask the board to appoint the pro committee, namely those two. And again, if somebody stepped up tonight that wanted to do the con, or we could certainly do that, but in the absence of that, the county auditor will do it.
If there is anyone present, either in person or virtually, who would like to step forward to be considered for that con committee, please raise your hand if you're here, or if you are watching via Zoom, please note your name and location, and we'll consider that. I'll give it about a minute and a half for any online responses.
Is it appropriate to ask a question right now?
Certainly.
Are
please.
there requirements for the person making the pro or con statement? Like, do they have to live within a certain area or be a certain age?
They actually do not. There is some limitation on the number of words that can be used and so on. But there is no limitation on where the person lives.
Since we are mentioning anyone interested in the con committee, if anyone is present who is interested in being considered for the pro committee as well, please raise your hand.
And the board can
note yourself.
approve up to 3 members for that committee.
Just a little while longer, since I just added that additional opportunity. And I just want to confirm that nothing has come in that I've missed. Nope. Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board? So we're looking at 2 members.
Actually, I do have one question. If we fail to appoint a con committee, do you know by which process the county seeks members for the con committee?
I have no idea, and I have seen voter pamphlets that do not include a statement one way or the other if no one stepped up, but it is the county auditor's purview, and I don't know what they would do to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to just briefly comment to say that I'm grateful for those who've stepped forward for our for consideration for the pro committee. Thank you, Val. Thank you, Betsy.
I have no one raising their hand virtually or in person for the con committee. So student advisor votes on approving the pro committee.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving memorandum 2223-26, appointment of pro con bond committees, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Memorandum 2223-26 has been approved. We'll now move on to reports. Mr. Pullman, financial and enrollment report.
Okay, this is our financial report as of January 31st and our enrollment report as of February 1st. I have to move something just a second. was covered by the Zoom page. Okay, so it's kind of hard to read things. Looking at enrollment, this is kind of the breakdown of the 4 major enrollment categories that we do report. The big box on the top is our basic ed enrollment. Those students that actually attend in person in classes. So you can see we're at about 1,081, a breakdown by each of the different locations. The high school CTE vocational program, about 68.4 kids are in that, which is an increase from previous month. Our ALE program, we also see a slight increase in Spokane virtual. It basically about doubled from the previous month, and special education is 181 students, so it's been very stable. So it is the start of the second term, so you see a little bit of adjustment sometimes. This is the average per year, and again, we are paid on the average from September through June. So as we progress through the year, it readjusts what our actual financial amount is we receive from OSPI, but it gives you the breakdown, and you can see between basic ed and our ALE, the variations that we see on a monthly basis. But if we look at our average, we're at about 1151 year to date, and anticipate that goes down slightly in the spring. So we'll probably be somewhere between 1145 to 1148 would be my guess for our end of our financial year calculation. Breakdown just by the kind of different entities, locations, the North Campus, South Campus, middle school, high school, SWA, and the ALE programs, and you can see where we are in those, and also the amount of kids that are in each of those as a percentage of the whole. That, you know, 31% of the students are actually in this building, et cetera.
I just want to provide my love that you know the estimation to 3 students. That,
yeah,
I love that, what that says about how well you know the patterns of this district. So thank you.
Okay. And then, you know, I always try to figure out where we're going with this, because one, I need to know what our financial amount is that we get for the year, but it helps me, especially this time of the year, in the budgeting for next year. By March, I'll have a good idea what I expect our ending balance will be for this year, and look at patterns for where I think we'll be for next year, because we get paid for the first 4 months of next year based on those estimates. So try to make it as accurate as possible. But it looks like we're fairly similar to that 5-year pattern. There's a couple years where it didn't work, but traditionally this is the pattern. We see that dotted black line on the bottom. We're up slightly in February, but I did hear we have a few students less in March. So once we get that March number, but I expect the same type of pattern. And then just a longer term look at, you know, where we've been. We move into the financial part, you'll see that we are about almost 42% of the way through our fiscal year, which again starts in September and goes through August. Our revenue is about 41%, and our expenditures at almost 40%. Even though the percent is smaller for the expenditures, you can see that the amount is larger. So it's a budget thing. We had budgeted spend more than we had received in revenue. If you look at the revenue, you'll see a little bit of a jump there for this month. We had basically been following the previous year patterns. That's because in January, OSPI rebuilds that apportionment report based upon our actual enrollment. Our enrollment's up from our budgeted amount, so we see the spike in January, and then it'll level off and continues through the rest of the year, but it gives us that little bit of income for the particular month. On the expenditure side, you can see there's a little bit of a drop in January, and that's a direct result of the fact that we pay some of our technology people through our capital projects fund, but their payroll is through our general fund. So every few months, I will then remove it from the general fund and pay it, the general fund from the capital projects fund. So it's an adjustment. I've started this month doing it on a monthly basis, so it won't make that variation in the future, but that's all it is. Otherwise, our expenditures would be slightly above where they currently are. We're following the same pattern that we have since September. Expenditures really have nothing to do with revenue and how that fluctuates. Look at the revenue, where it's coming from. The left is our property taxes. This is our EP&O levy. And then our local revenue. Nice thing, if you look at 22, 23, you see that we are getting back to that pre-pandemic level with the local dollars. Some of that is community center, some of it's what we're doing in the buildings, a few things like that. And we did receive a $48,000 reimbursement from risk management, which kind of helps pop that up a little bit. But anyways, it is stronger than it has been. So we're seeing growth in that area, which is a positive thing. And then there's that big jump in the state dollars, the direct result of the apportionment. Again, it looks a lot larger in January, but over the course of the year, it will start dropping down. We are collecting our state and our federal grants now. That system's up and running. So we're back in where we should be as far as revenue collection. So that was a big advantage over last month. We look at our costs with encumbrances, things we know that we have to pay for, basically contracts, most likely purchase orders for supplies. You can see that our non-employee costs or MSOCs, materials, supplies, and other costs is about 55%. Payroll is at about 98%, and totally we're about 91%. So we're still in a strong place for this time of the year. And then we look at our expenditures and it breaks down those big categories. The three on the left are personnel and benefits. The one I want to look at is really that benefit, the one in the middle. You can see that that continues to grow, and that's something we have no control over. That's retirement, that's, paid family medical leave increases, it's the cost of healthcare, all those things. But, it's one of those things that is actually a large part of our budget. We start looking at benefits, that it's kind of the unseen costs that people don't pay attention to sometimes. You look at salary and those other things, but you don't really look at what the benefit cost is. And for a lot of our employees, that benefit cost is 50 to 70% of their salary. So it's a big thing as we go through that budget process of how we spend our money. This is something that's a little different. It's kind of weird, but we spend a lot of money on leave, on additional hours, those type things. And I want to try to track those so that you can visually see how that looks. We don't have a straight line like this as far as what it normally looks like, but I just divided it out over the year, with the last 2 months being summer and you don't have as many leaves or additional hours that you would see during the school year. But the blue line is basically leaves. It's sick leave, personal leave, professional development leave, anything where we have an employee out and we're putting a substitute in place for them. It's the cost of that. The additional hours is the bottom one, and is a red line. And you can see that, it started out very high at the beginning of the year and then has dropped down to more reasonable numbers. And that's going to be things that you don't think about. It's our school bus driver who's taking a field trip or taking a team someplace, right? We can't create a contract for that because we don't know who's going to do it. It's a bid system. It's we have a position open and we don't have anybody in that position, so we put a substitute in there. Well, they're not really a substitute, it's additional hours for somebody because there is nobody they're replacing. It's replacement, covering a class for another employee, or a variety of different things. Summer extended school year programs, things that are an hourly based. So that's why you see that big jump at the beginning of the year as you pick up all the summer work in September as they turn in a timesheet at the end of August. And then it's the start of the school year and it's those type things. But this is $500,000 that we look at in here. So I wanted to kind of identify how we're doing in there, and we're doing fine. I would be a little concerned about additional hours if I didn't know that our contracted hours are less than we budgeted for. And it's unfilled positions, right? It's been hard to hire people sometimes. So we have somebody doing additional work. Food service is an example. It's like, okay, we can't find somebody, so everybody else works an extra hour a day. So it's those additional costs. So that's what you're seeing in here. So I'm not concerned it's high at the beginning of the year, as long as we get it back down normally. Fund balance, because of that increase in revenue in January, you see a slight bump up there. Normally, we've been kind of bumping along that same dotted line as we were last year. Very similar patterns in revenue and expenditures. It's just an adjustment for January apportionment. Budget status report. Currently, our fund balance is a little over $5 million, and you can see the revenue of about 8.7, the expenditures of about 8.9 million, kind of the breakdown by program and where the revenue comes from. Another way of looking at our fund balance is basically assets and liability. How much of it is cash? How much is it due from other places? What do we owe? That type of thing. The one thing you see this year that you may not have noticed is there's a lease receivable and a deferred inflow for leases. we're now reporting our leases on our financial statements, which is new. It's GASB 87, a new standard this year that we have to report. It doesn't change anything for us. You see, it's a asset and a liability. It's like taxes receivable. You know, it's an asset and liability, but it's something that we have to report on. So it is a new change to our accounting that doesn't matter if it's large or small because they offset each other. And it's all it really is. It's the leases that we have the community center. I have to report a value for those, whether we receive the money or not. There's a potential value in the future. The other funds, capital projects, has about $1.7 million at this time. Debt service has about 85,000, ASB about 92,000, transportation vehicle fund about 150,000. I will bring you a proposal next month to purchase an electric school bus. I need to submit that to the federal government by April 28th. So we'll get that done in March and get that off so we can get that process going. So we're looking at 2 different school buses right now, 2 different companies, getting the proposals with the additional things that we'd like to have on there, and then compare the 2 buses and see which one we will recommend. But we'll get that to you next month. And then the private purpose trust fund has about 795,000 in it. Any questions I could answer for you?
Just out of curiosity, what are the 2 different companies we're considering for the electric bus?
Well, one is Lion. So there is a school bus with them. They're a little slower in getting information to me. Matter of fact, they gave me a quote this week and it was less than the state bid. And when I contacted them, they said, well, you're the first district that we've gone through this process with in Washington, which I don't believe that because I know another district that has ordered one from them. But so it's a Lion, and then it's a company called RWC. And so it's basically an international school bus. It looks very similar to the ones we have now, except it has an electric motor in it. It actually has been in district. Our mechanic has driven that one, was quite impressed with the power that those things have. Also looking at the infrastructure for the charging stations. There's, you know, a variety of different things that you can get in there and the capacity that is needed for that as far as the electrical supply part of it. So.
Going from a gas car to an electric car is really fun. I can only imagine going from a diesel bus to an electric bus is a lot more fun.
It's quite a different, though I have to admit, I was on a Zoom meeting today with a lot of other school districts who have electric buses in other places, and it's not all roses and sunshine. There are some limited issues with that. Mileage is one of those, and it's also affected by weather. You know, the colder it gets, the faster it pulls those batteries down, reduces your mileage. So there's a lot of things to think about in these electric school buses. They're not appropriate for every route. You know, we have to look at which routes we have that we could actually use an electric school bus. The advantage we have is that most of our routes are only 25, 30 miles. So we can charge them in midday and be okay. But what I'm hearing is that, you know, they're saying 100 miles, but really 80 is about what you can anticipate based on normal conditions of having to open and close your door every 2 minutes, and because everything's electric on it, right? Running your heaters and all the things that go with it. So, but it'll be exciting.
I also appreciate the education on leaves and how that affects the budget. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, sure.
Other comments or questions?
I just wish you could talk about buses for another 45 minutes, but I guess we can do that next time.
Thank you, Mr. Pullman. We will move on to superintendent's report. Dr. Moshe.
Mine's quick. I know the student report is up there, but it does say superintendent first tonight. So I'm going to go first, I guess. I just wanted to update the board on things that I've been working on. So I did have a meeting with 11 students from the superintendent's advisory team today. They always ask me very good questions, and their information is very clear in terms of what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so we talked about buses, crowding, and we also talked about student behavior, talked about teacher behavior, talked about how teachers respond to student behavior. So they gave me a lot of good information that I shared with back to them and with our administrative team so that we can follow up on some of it. Culture of care survey out to staff. We have almost 80 respondents. I'm hoping for 100% response rate. So I'm going to give it a little more time. CEE surveys coming up in April. That'll go out to everybody, staff, students, and community. We are in the process of budgeting at the administrative level, figuring out where we think we're going to be. So that's starting. We've had a couple of admin meetings on that, and we'll continue through March and then start to come back to the board with what we're thinking. And Day on the Hill. I know the board probably is going to talk about that, but that's exciting to bring our students with us to that event. So that's coming up this weekend. And that's my update.
Comments or questions?
Dr. Moshe, will you talk a little more about crowding? I ask because we're adding another grade to, I assume you mean crowding at the secondary campus.
No, crowding on the buses.
Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind.
So students were concerned that if we're going to a single bus route, what would that look like and what would the numbers be? And so I explained to them that we can take 56 passengers at 2 per seat, even though we're allowed more than 2 per seat, but it's comfortable to be 2 in a seat. And that most of our runs combined, if not all of them, would be less than that, both morning and afternoon. We may need to add a run just to even it out a little bit, but we're really confident that we can do a single bus run. Talk to them about starting school at the secondary level at 8:15, at the K-5 at 8:30, and then picking up at the secondary at 2:40 and at the elementary at 2:55. And they, again, the students expressed, where are people going to sit? What's that going to be like? How are you going to make sure that that happens? They also had a very interesting, well, 2 things. I think I told you this the last time. They wanted to know if we could buy double-decker buses. And we found out that we cannot, but I thought it was a great question. They were really thinking. But their other question, we always have trouble in, I shouldn't say it that way. It's challenging to make sure we can supervise students in areas like restrooms and hallways and cafeterias, because they can get into mischief. So the question was raised that if we do single-use bathrooms, how will we ensure that we can supervise them? It's a great question. So don't have answers yet, but again, the students are pretty insightful. So
Thanks for the clarification. And are matters like bell times and bus routes, is that a board matter or a administrative matter?
administrative matter.
Great. Well, as always, I trust your judgment on those decisions.
Yeah, so we will share it with the board, but bus routes and time we start, again, the board's purview is, are we getting our requisite minutes in? So that we can claim our aid and be appropriate in terms of meeting all the rules and requirements. But whether we start at 8:15 or, again, I've shared it with you, but you don't have to take action on it.
And I believe that when we discussed it last week, we all shared our approval. I don't know if there was
Right.
a formal vote or not, but we all
Correct.
shared approval for the general process. Yeah.
And we've certainly talked with our teachers union about it and the changes, and they've talked with their membership as well. So.
Thank you, Dr. Moshe. Student board report.
Okay, so starting off with the high school, about 2 weeks ago, the senior ASB class put on the black and white ball. which was really fun. We had over 170 attendees. So it's really great to bring that money into ASB and have a fun event for students. Today, as you can see these pictures on the board, we had a Martin Luther King Jr. Walkthrough. And so students in their advisory classes for the past couple weeks worked on what we want to see in our school community and what it looks like. So by doing this, they created posters and words they felt resonated with improving our school community and the greater community. A few things I took pictures of today were amplifying student voices. There's also discussion about equity, inclusion, and then some symbols as well. And then another thing to point out is a student today mentioned to me that they felt that they have seen visible improvements to the diversity and inclusion in this school, which was something really meaningful to me and something to take pride in, as well as to continue building on. So I just wanted to mention that. Sports. High school sports start on Monday. So if any high school students are on here, including myself, this is a reminder to register for sports and for parents as well.
ASB has been working on the budget these past few weeks, and I know Exec ASB is meeting tomorrow to go over the overall budget from this year and looking at the budget for next year and trying to break that apart. So kind of fun and interesting, just looking at all the numbers, looking at all the allocations of the funds, looking at everything we've approved this year, going through all that. We're doing that tomorrow. A lot of clubs have been really active recently. Social Justice Club just had a bake sale for Whidbey Island Nourishes for Poverty Awareness Month. So it's really cool to see clubs active in aspects of the community. Model UN is attending a conference on Saturday that both Audrey and I are attending. And we have 7 students going to Seattle Pacific University, and we get to meet with a whole bunch of delegates from across the state. There's a few from Canada, and we are in 3 different committees. Supreme Court, so we have students representing judges and justices, and then lawyers and defendants. And then we have 1 student in Historic Crisis Committee. So this student is representing, I forget who, in the Julius Caesar War in ancient Rome. So it's kind of a fun twist on things. And we have 1 student, Audrey, is in OPEC. So she's discussing oil, which is kind of cool. Interact Club has been doing a lot of volunteer opportunities. One this past weekend was Enzo House, which was kind of commemorating one of the founders of Interact who passed away recently. And it was a lot of landscaping and helping the house kind of look better. And then they helped Good Cheer at Ken's Corner move locations. They kind of just moved right next to each other, but it's a lot of moving things from one building and one room to another. So it was good to have students help out with that. Queer and Trans Club is working on Rainbow Prom. So Oak Harbor and Coopville hosted it for the past 2 years. So South Whidbey is hosting it this year, and that's in May, and that's really cool and a good opportunity. They're also doing movie nights and bake sales, which is cool. And National Honor Society has a blood drive tomorrow for students and community members. And we have over 25 members helping out through that, passing out food beforehand, afterwards, walking students back to class, and just making sure everyone is good and right after donating blood. And then we've also had other volunteer opportunities, such as helping out with the tiny houses in Langley. So on Monday, a few of us were there and we were helping just do pathways and stuff for those, which was really cool. There has been a few complaints around the school, one being better Wi-Fi for students. It's hard when your computer starts to crash and your Wi-Fi turns off mid-class. So getting better Wi-Fi or a better setup for students is something really important, as well as better Chromebooks. A lot of the ones we have are very slow, and there's a lot of complaints around those. Another issue is a lot of students are concerned about canceling or delaying school when there's snow and ice on the roads, especially since there's a lot of new teen drivers. A lot of us don't feel safe when we're put out on the roads at 7 a.m. and there's a lot of ice and stuff. So there's a lot of support for later start times and delaying school.
Another concern is infrastructure and maintenance at the school, which aligns with the bond. So one of the concerns is the locks in the bathroom not functioning and having doors swing open. And then another student shared that they often feel that the gaps between stalls don't leave much privacy. So those were a few concerns with the restrooms, as well as feeling like the restrooms and other aspects of the school aren't ADA compliant. So that's another thing that is brought up in the bond. So that was really great to see. Another infrastructure concern is leaks in the walls and the ceilings, specifically at the high school. Here's an image of a classroom. So definitely things that should be addressed with the bond if passed. So at the middle school, currently there are a lot of sports going on. It was really fun to see the girls basketball team leaving yesterday for their first away game at Granite Falls. There's also wrestling. And then during the holidays, they had candygrams, which were a really great way to raise money to support student activities. And they are organizing their first dance for this spring. So that was really exciting to hear about.
They also have some new clubs. So they have a gaming club, which is kind of all types of games, board games, chess, I heard was popular. And there's also a crochet and knitting club, which I thought was really cool and interesting that I've seen a bigger like popularity around that, which is really cool. And they're waiting for approval on a Taylor Swift fan club, which me personally, I love that. That's just fantastic.
I may be to blame for 2 of those 3 clubs. In my visit to one of the math classes, I was talking about some of the uses of math and gaming, and my history with gaming came up, and there was a lot of eagerness around that, and then eagerness about a Taylor Swift fan club at the same time.
I'm hoping to see some collaboration between the high school and middle school for the Taylor Swift fan
Yeah,
club.
we might need a high school.
I
high
hope we
school
get to
aspect.
see some crocheted Taylor Swift dolls.
It's really cool to see the middle school students coming up with these clubs and really bringing them forth into light. Also, 7th graders are helping with the 5th and 6th graders transition to the high school for next year. So these Cougar leaders, there's about 20 of them. They're going to just help with the transition as the new grades come in. They'll come down to the South Campus, do some talking down here. The students will go up to the high school, kind of see how it works and everything. So that's a cool opportunity for students to kind of have a leadership role.
And then at the South Campus, which is 5 through 6, students have been also busy working to raise money to support their ASB, such as through selling Valentines, as well as holding a bake sale. So it's really great to see students engaged in fundraising, because it's definitely a skill that will be carried on throughout your life. Students have also been busy working on the yearbook, which was exciting to hear about. And another activity is students have been learning about the contributions of Black leaders throughout Black history, and recognizing that through their Cougar Pride Assembly, which is held, I believe, on March 2nd. So I'm hoping to possibly attend that assembly as well. And then currently they are developing an outdoor experience for 5-6, which I believe it was approved in the consent agenda. So that was exciting. And I'm really excited for them to experience that.
And lastly, with the North Campus, it was really great to see the kindergartners through 4th graders present. I believe there was 2 2nd graders and the rest were 4th graders. It's really cool to see the younger students come and present and just be able to have this opportunity. And it was really cool to hear about the food drives and the WAIF food drives and the drama club, sports club, and art club. And it's really great to see just the younger students having access to these things in our school.
Katya, the last thing you mentioned in the high school, I didn't write down what I wanted to ask about. Can you remind me what that was? I had something I wanted to ask about with that.
Delays,
Right before that.
Wi-Fi and Chromebooks.
Yeah. Do you know if that's a recent thing that has been happening, a recent change? Because I've been hearing and experiencing issues with internet connection across the South End.
Chromebooks,
Not the Chromebooks,
internet,
but yeah.
it's kind of just been constant. And
Okay.
I think part of that is it's a public internet.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of students on it and there's also not students on it. So it's just a lot of people on one Wi-Fi system.
I was just curious if it was a recent thing or long running. So thank you. And the Chromebooks, we did approved a purchase order on that beginning of this school year, as I recall that. So they're just coming in.
I will follow up with Mr. Turner to find out if he's knows of what the experience is. We get our internet through the K20 network. And our Chromebooks, we've continued to purchase them. So I'm not really sure what's happening, but we can follow up. That's great information for, I don't know if you were if you shared it at the building level already with Mr. Patton. You did. Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, it's great to hear so much leadership, all the different ways students are getting involved in the community and helping other students and the elementary students who are here, and especially the two of you. I just really appreciate the role modeling that you're doing for other students in the district.
Yeah, thank you, same. And what I'm noticing is there's so many skill sets being built and being offered across the grades, which is very fun. And also 2 questions. Will you help me become that exciting about building budgets? And also, when are y'all finding time to bake?
I think the budgeting is really exciting because in the past, I just like to share, ISB didn't have a direct role over how budgets were getting allocated. So it's really great to be able to see these students critically evaluate where the money's going and be directly part of the process. And I think it's something students are really excited about. And I believe we set the sports budgets like last week or the week before. So
Just very exciting to see the next generation of Dan Pullmans emerge into the fold.
To answer the baking question, I don't know how we do it.
And look, some of us like spreadsheets.
Thank goodness.
Any other comments or questions on the student board members report? Thank you both. We'll move on to board member report.
I'd like to just briefly give a bit of an update on the Washington State legislative session. So many of us will be down in Olympia for the Days on the Hill in a couple of days, this Sunday and Monday. One thing that might be good prep for my fellow board members or members of the public would be to visit the bill tracker that's provided on the WASDA website. You can find that by going to wssda.org. And then under strategic advocacy, drop down to legislative updates, and there you'll see bill tracker. And that'll give you some insight into all the various bills that are passing through the various committees of the Senate and the House that have something to do with public education. A lot of the bills have to do with special education funding. There's a really important Senate bill around prejudgment interest that we're going to need to advocate around because it potentially would create a huge risk, financial risk for districts should it pass. There's some transportation bills winding through the legislature, and also a bill about universal free meals that's likely to be cut way back, but it is currently still alive. And last Friday was the first cutoff date, which means that bills that weren't out of their committees of origin basically don't get to go forward. The next upcoming cutoff date this Friday is basically for bills that are referred to a budget committee. So if it's currently in the Ways and Means or in the appropriations, they have to get out of that committee by Friday in order to be considered viable for this session. So it's worth keeping an eye on things. Things can change week to week, and I look forward to being down there together to advocate for our students and our district.
I'm really jealous of you who get to go. It's going to be really awesome and exciting. Thank you.
I just want to appreciate you, Marnie, for just keeping us informed throughout and being our representative to the legislature and really just keeping us informed on what's going on. And I really look forward to doing this work with you this weekend.
+1. I have 2 quick items. One, I was chatting with Dr. Moshe, who mentioned that the board used to do something called a yearly data summit, where we would look deeper at a lot of the data we're getting from the various surveys and iReady and any other sources to help us inform our goals and our policy. And so if it pleases the rest of the board, I would like to ask the chair for us to add that back into our yearly schedule at an appropriate time in the year that, you know, leads up to all those decisions that the data would help us make.
Do we have a model for that?
We do. The way the Data Summit has worked in the past, and it's been quite some time, interrupted by COVID and so on, is we literally created a gallery walk in here where we had big picture data, like our attendance data, our graduation data, our iReady data, our discipline data, and so on, so that the board could get a big picture look at all of that. And then the administrators were on hand. We would do it at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon prior to a workshop or board meeting, so that the administrators were on hand and you could ask about specifics and, you know, dive into whatever it is that piqued your interest. So that was the way we have done it in the past. Typically did it kind of like when we did this school improvement update, February, March of the school year. But we can certainly put it into the rotation.
I love that idea. And I'm reminded of the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode when Data started painting. That's another kind of data gallery walk that I could enjoy, but I'm up for this one.
Wow.
I think it gets to what I think I heard the last time when we did the school improvement reports is, how do we go deeper? How do we look at it more critically? And I think that might give you at least a starting point. And then if you want to do something different, then we can do that.
Any thoughts on it over here? Well, I'm happy to try to work that into the schedule if it sounds like folks are interested. Based on my comment to Anna, I think you can assume that I'm interested. Yeah, we'll get it in there on one of these spring
Great meetings. Thank you. And then the other last thing is that since our last meeting, I took a tour of the high school, and I just want to let the rest of the board know how impressed I was with the environment and the culture and the quality of the teaching and the engagement from the students. I was just really, really impressed with the great work being done over there, and the culture of care work, especially you can see it happening in the classroom. So I would encourage everybody to take a visit there when the opportunity comes.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to visit as well, and it's always so energizing to me. So yeah, I would +1 to that call if you can make it fit in your schedule. It's fantastic. Anything else? Just make sure I'm not missing anything. Nope. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Good night.